He is part of the broadcast with Chris Webber and Marv Albert, Game 3 of Golden State and New Orleans, 8 p.m. Eastern on TNT. That comes up on Friday night. He is David Aldridge. How you doing, D.A.?
Richard, how are you doing, sir?
I am better for chatting with you. If this was the National Football League, David, we would be saying the Rockets are done. Rockets are finished, and that's the usual week-to-week league thing. It's an NBA playoff 7-game series. How do you read what Utah was able to pull off in Houston last night, David?
Well, I think Utah matches up as well with Houston as anybody does, right? I mean, if you look at the Rockets, one of the biggest advantages they have over most teams is Clint Capella in the middle. I mean, he's just been sensational all season. He is great in the screen and roll at both ends, whether it's offensively or defensively. His rim runs space the floor. His presence spaces the floor. And I think having a guy like Gobert in the middle takes some, not all, but takes a lot of that away, and a lot of that advantage away for Houston at both ends of the floor again. I mean, Gobert obviously is an outstanding defensive player. The numbers the Rockets have with him on the floor defensively this season are insane. So that's one thing. And then you add the ability to make shots, which Utah has. You start with Ingles, but now you have Mitchell in there also who can make shots. And I always thought Jay Crowder in big games was a very, very good shot maker, right? I mean, he seems to rise to the occasion. So they have that. Now, not having Rubio is a problem and will be a problem for Utah. At least last night, I thought Eisen played pretty well and did a good job. That will be a problem as the series goes on, though, the longer that Rubio's out.
So now that home court goes to Utah, and now James Harden, the beard, has to face Mitt Romney and the rest of that crew there. How do you see Houston digging deep here, David? Now that they are and also look, Chris Paul has. I'm sure he's sick of hearing it. Never made it to a conference finals. Never. And now he needs to come up with one win in Utah to try and have a chance to do that with Houston.
Right. I don't think it's, look, I think Houston's a better team. I think Houston will win the series. I certainly don't think it's outside of their talent level to win a game in Utah. It's difficult because Utah's real good at home, but not impossible. But, yeah, look, Utah's playing with a lot of confidence, as they should. They're playing with house money. Nobody expects them to beat Houston, so they can play free and kind of loose and easy. So from that standpoint, I think it will be, as I said, difficult, but not impossible for Houston to win a game on the road and take it right back and finish the series in 6, maybe 7 games. But, yeah, I mean, I think that they'll be fine. They've been, if not the best defensive team in the league, one of the 2 or 3 best defensive teams in the league all season. As long as they come back to that, if they get back to that, I think they'll be fine. They did not play with a whole lot of energy at either end last night, and it cost them.
So before we turn the page to the rest of the playoffs, and including the series you're doing with Marvin C-Webb, now that's moved to New Orleans, you've seen so much basketball, DA, in your time with ESPN, Washington Post, and more. Can you place in perspective what we're seeing out of Donovan Mitchell right now? It's
special. It is, as good of big game rookie performances as I've seen in some time. You go back to Magic and those guys who played at that level when they were rookies. Michael did it his second year with the 63 in Houston, 63 against the Celtics. So you've certainly seen it from the greatest players. It's unusual just because the pedigree of Donovan Mitchell did not suggest that this is what he was going to be capable of. In all fairness to him, and I mean, just in all due respect to him, that was not what the thought process was on him coming out of Louisville last year. I mean, most NBA scouts that I talked to thought, hey, this, he has a chance to be a good player. Has a chance to be maybe a real good player, but I don't think anybody saw this. And it changes the trajectory of a franchise when you get a player with this kind of impact where the Jazz drafted him. So it just makes it gives them possibilities that they may not have thought of before. He has been spectacular. He is not shirking from the moment. He is embracing the moment and still playing at the level that he's been at all year. It's very unusual, and tribute to the kid. He's been awesome.
And you've covered a series where Anthony Davis, prior to running into the Golden State buzzsaw, was just bursting, just an absolute burst on the scene with what happened with Portland. Give me the recipe for Alvin Gentry and this team to have a shot. Is there one? You got one for me, David? Against Golden State?
It's tough for them. It's tough for them, Rich, because I thought they actually played pretty well in Game 2. I mean, they kept coming back, and they fell down. They came back, and they challenged Golden State throughout that game up until the very end of the game. But it's just so hard to stop the Warriors from doing what they want to do. It's just so difficult because, especially now with Curry back, they just have an ability to make shots. On a given night, one of those three may be off. And even the other night, I don't think Durant played all that well for 3 quarters, and Klay didn't play well at all. And it still didn't matter because Curry was back and was on fire. So the idea that all 3 of those guys are going to be off is you just can't put odds on that if you're the opposition. And that's what makes them so difficult to stop. Because one of those guys is probably going to get 30. That just makes it so much easier for the rest of them. But I will say this. I thought the Pelicans brought a lot more fight to Game 2. They were a lot more not aggressive, that's not the word I'm looking for, defensively. They were a lot more efficient defensively. I thought they did a much better job of taking away some of Golden State's space that they like to operate in. The first game they got cut up by the split action that the Warriors love to run. It's just so difficult to practice that because you just don't know. You can't do it in real time in practice. So I think maybe if I'm New Orleans, I'm hanging my hat on. Maybe my guys are figuring out the split action a little bit better, where Durant and Thompson are creating havoc off the dribble. And maybe if we can keep them from both having big nights, we can stay in a game and we can get to the line a little bit more at home, because I know that the Pelicans feel like they should have gotten more calls in games 1 and 2. Maybe we get more free throws, slow the game down, allow our defense to set up. I mean, there is a formula. It's not. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know that it's much of one, but there is one where you can beat Golden State, especially when you're at home and they're on the road.
David Aldridge, who was definitely not a fill-in guest, as he opined he would be when on Twitter earlier today. Not at all, DA. Not at all. Not at all. We're like, we want to talk NBA, and I wanted David Aldridge, so I'm like, let's get David Aldridge. That is the truth. That is the truth. What do you think happens tonight? We want to talk about house money. Cleveland has that in front of them this evening in Toronto, and then Boston. Terry Rozier, what a story, taking on Philadelphia. What do you see tonight in that double dip, David?
I think Philly's going to play a lot better. I mean, they had been off for a week, and it showed. It looked like they were off for a week, and they didn't bring the juice, as Greg Popovich likes to say. They just didn't have the energy, and Boston had all the energy. I think Philly will bring a lot more energy tonight. What Boston does, what Brad Stevens does, is just incredible. The way he maxes out whatever group of players he has available to him on a given night is just amazing. The confidence that they all play with is a tribute to him and that staff, because most guys who don't get a lot of run, when they're thrown in, they got the deer in the headlights look, they got nerves. These guys all feel like, no, we can play, and it's because Stevens gives them that confidence that they can go do things. But I think Philly wins tonight. I just have a feeling Philly's going to play a lot better. I think Embiid will play a lot better. I think all their guys will play a lot better, and they'll even that series up. With Toronto and Cleveland, I don't know, man. I'll put it this way: if Toronto doesn't beat them this year, I don't know that they're ever going to beat them. I mean, come on, you have every advantage you could possibly ask for to play against LeBron James. His team's not that good. Your team is deep and has been the best team in the East all year, most of the second half of the season. You got home court, or you had home court advantage. there's no excuse. There's no excuse for not beating this team, and they somehow managed to gack game one. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. So now you got some work to do because now you got LeBron thinking he might be able to steal this thing, and that's a bad recipe for the Raptors.
And I'm going to go with a sports talk radio question for you to wrap up our conversation. My guy Chris Brockman had this idea for a poll question that we decided to go against yesterday. If you had a choice of somebody for the next 5 years, Chris, ask him that question.
Yeah, for the next 5 years, DA, would you rather have LeBron James on your team or Brad Stevens coaching your team?
If you had a choice of one.
Well, for the next 5 years?
Correct.
For where they are right now, you'd rather have Brad Stevens because LeBron's 33. I mean, if it's 23-year-old LeBron.
Well, the reason why we ask it is because of how LeBron is playing. I mean, he's playing his best basketball, you could say, of his entire career.
Question. No question, but, look, I'll just say this. Father Time continues, as far as I know, is still undefeated.
That's right.
So, I will take Stevens just because he seems to have such an incredible ability to, as I say, get the most out of whoever he's coaching. It's just remarkable. And obviously no disrespect to LeBron, but he's 33. I mean, at some point you start to show your age, even him. So, I'll go with Stevens because then I've got, more trips to Boston, which is pretty cool.
David, always enjoy your presence on TV whenever Susie and I see you. We're like, hey, there's David. And always enjoy our chats on the show.
Yes, Richard. Can just one thing?
Yes, sir.
I just want to be fair to our former employer at the World.
No, I know they've got the game. I know.
They will be doing Game 3. Yes.
I know.
I'm here in New Orleans, but they will be doing 3 and 4, and then if there's a Game 5, then you will see Marvin, C. Webb, and I.
Okay, but see, you are fair and balanced, David. Thank you. Appreciate
my goal.
that.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's David Aldridge.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.